In the warm, humid nights of New Orleans, jazz still drifts through narrow streets like a heartbeat. Ethan Cole, a 38-year-old pianist long accustomed to empty apartments and late rehearsals, played his set beneath the soft glow of a French Quarter club. The applause was gentle, polite, until a woman in a crimson dress stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Samantha Lee, the owner of a rising art gallery known for its bold exhibitions and midnight gatherings. She carried the effortless charm of someone who moved easily among critics, collectors, and musicians. Conversation with her felt electric, a sudden spark in the quiet rhythm of Ethan's life. Samantha invited him to a gallery opening the following evening, promising music, artists, and a room full of people who lived for the next idea. Ethan heard in her voice the possibility of a world he had almost forgotten, a world of color, risk, and inspiration. After years of silence and routine, he felt the first stirring of a melody he thought he had lost. That night, as he packed away his sheet music, the streets outside pulsed with brass and rain, and Ethan sensed that something new, something vibrant, was about to begin. At first, Samantha's suggestions felt like encouragement. After a late set, she would lean across the small table, eyes alight, and say, "You should open with something sharper, something that surprises them." She spoke with the certainty of a curator who knew how to capture an audience, and Ethan, flattered by her enthusiasm, listened. Soon her guidance grew more pointed. She flipped through his worn sheet music, tapping a manicured finger against the ballads he loved most. "These sound dated," she said with a soft laugh. "Let me help you bring the music into this century." Samantha's words carried the smooth authority of someone used to shaping a room, and Ethan found himself nodding even when a quiet unease stirred beneath the compliment. Set by set, the repertoire changed. The smoky improvisations that once defined his evenings gave way to brighter, faster pieces chosen to fit her vision. The crowd responded, but Ethan began to feel as if his own hands were no longer playing for him. Each note pleased Samantha, yet each performance left him oddly hollow, like a pianist echoing someone else's tune. As the weeks passed, Samantha's influence reached beyond the stage. She began to speak of his friends, trumpeters and bass players who had shared late-night sets with him for years, as if they were obstacles he had outgrown. "They hold you back, Ethan," she said one evening while closing the door of her gallery. "You have the talent to headline festivals, but you can't do that while wasting time in smoky bars with musicians who don't think big." Her words settled in like a quiet refrain. At first Ethan resisted, telling himself he would still meet the guys for a Tuesday jam. But when invitations came, midnight texts about an open session on Frenchman Street, he hesitated. Samantha's plans always seemed to overlap. A last-minute gallery event, a collector's dinner, a promise that tonight could change everything for you. Skipping a gig felt harmless once, then twice, until absence became routine. The city that had once pulsed to his music began to move without him. Club owners stopped calling when they needed a pianist to fill a late slot. Flyers listed new names in the spaces where his used to be. On nights when he did walk past the clubs, he heard other keyboards carrying melodies he had once owned. The notes drifted through open doors like memories, bittersweet and distant. Ethan told himself he was evolving, focusing on bigger stages, but a thin silence followed him home. The improvisations that used to spill from his fingers when he sat at the piano now arrived haltingly, like echoes from another life. Bit by bit, the city was forgetting his sound, and he feared he might be forgetting it too. The week of the Crescent City Jazz Festival arrived with the sticky heat of midsummer and a promise of career-making crowds. Ethan had spent months preparing a set that blended his early ballads with new improvisations, a sound entirely his own. 2 days before the opening night, his phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, an old bassist friend. "Man, why is Samantha listed as your producer? And why aren't I on the bill?" Confused, Ethan stepped into the heavy evening air and walked to the nearest poster board. Under the bold festival logo he saw it in crisp black letters, "Ethan Cole, produced by Samantha Lee." Below the headline, the familiar names of his longtime bandmates were gone, replaced with musicians he barely knew. The paper smelled of fresh ink, the kind that dries before you can scrape it off. That night's rehearsal confirmed his fears. Samantha arrived early, a sleek tablet in hand, and began rearranging sheet music as if the songs were her property. "We'll cut the ballads," she said, her tone brisk. "The crowd wants energy, not nostalgia. Trust me, this is how you make headlines." When Ethan objected, she tilted her head and offered a thin smile. "Your old material is charming, but it doesn't sell." Something in him snapped, not in anger but in resolve. He sat at the grand piano, ignored the set list she had laid out, and let his hands fall into the keys. A melody emerged, low and haunting, the opening bars of a piece he had written years earlier in the quiet after his divorce. It wasn't on any program and it didn't seek her approval. The notes swelled, filling the rehearsal hall with a sound that belonged only to him. For the first time in months, Ethan felt the room bend to his own rhythm. Samantha's voice faded to the edges of the music, powerless against the living proof of who he was. His protest was wordless, but every chord declared it. This stage, this music, and this name were his alone. Festival day broke clear and hot, the kind of New Orleans morning when even the air seems to vibrate. Ethan arrived at the main stage hours early, carrying only a worn leather folder of his own compositions. The official set list, Samantha's carefully curated plan, lay untouched in the dressing room. He had already made his choice. When the lights dimmed and the crowd settled, Ethan stepped to the piano with a calm that surprised him. Instead of the slick, high-energy opener Samantha had demanded, he began the first aching chords of River Light, a ballad he had written years ago and played countless times in smoke-filled clubs. The melody unfolded slowly, rich and unhurried, the sound of a man reclaiming his voice. The audience listened in silence at first, then leaned forward, drawn into the deep blue notes. By the final crescendo, the hall erupted, cheers, whistles, a standing ovation that rolled like a wave across the festival grounds. Ethan rose, bowing once, the stage lights reflecting in his eyes. From the corner of his vision he caught a glimpse of Samantha in the wings, her expression a flash of disbelief and anger before she turned sharply and disappeared into the crowd. Ethan didn't follow. Instead, he stepped off the stage and into the waiting arms of Marcus and the old bandmates who had gathered behind the curtains. Their smile said everything. For the first time in years, the music, and the moment, belonged entirely to him. In the weeks after the festival, Ethan moved through the city as if someone had lifted a veil from the streets. The neon blues of Frenchman Street glowed brighter, the humid nights carried a sharper rhythm. Word spread quickly that he was back and old friends began to call. Marcus invited him to a late jam at the Spotted Cat, and for the first time in months Ethan said yes without hesitation. Those nights felt like coming home. The small clubs welcomed him with open arms, musicians greeting him with familiar nods and riffs that slipped easily into his own. Improvisation returned like a long-lost language. Melodies tumbled from his fingers with a freedom he had almost forgotten. Each set was unplanned, alive, proof that no one could script his music but him. Out of these sessions grew a new project, a record he titled Silent Echoes. The name carried every lesson of the past year, that even when someone tries to drown out your voice, the truth still resonates. Ethan spent long evenings in the studio with the old crew, capturing the raw sound of their late-night jams. The album became both a statement and a celebration, each track pulsing with the certainty that he alone defined his art. As the final mix played through the monitors, Ethan leaned back, listening to the piano's rich, unbound chords. The city outside hummed with life, and for the first time in years he felt completely aligned with its heartbeat. No one could tell him what to play, when to play, or who to be. His music, unmistakable and free, was the proof that his voice had never truly been silenced. The theater was empty now, the last echoes of applause dissolved into the rafters. A single spotlight lingered on the grand piano at center stage, casting soft gold across the polished wood. Ethan sat alone on the bench, fingers resting lightly on the keys, listening to the hush that followed a night of music. Outside, the city murmured with distant traffic and the faint cry of a saxophone from a late-night bar. Inside, only the quiet remained, deep, resonant, entirely his. He let one final chord drift into the air, a gentle pulse that faded like a heartbeat returning to rest. Ethan exhaled, a slow, steady breath, and a small smile touched his face. "My silence belongs to no one," he whispered, the words carrying softly through the empty hall. "It sings with my music now." The last note lingered in the stillness, a promise and a freedom all his own.